Good morning and hi, my name is Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday, May the 13th, and I'm back with another interview. Slightly earlier time today, so thanks for joining me. My friends in Europe and the UK, it's probably a better time for you, right? And I see we've got some people from the UK in the chat. And my guest today is actually based in America, so you may not be familiar with his story. And actually, I wasn't familiar with his story either, but this story is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to interview today and get to the bottom of this story. And also, if you'd like to follow along and ask any questions as we go, that would be awesome. We welcome them, and we thank you for spending time with us today. So please welcome Chuck Surack from Sweetwater. How you doing, Chuck? Good morning.
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I have to say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And also thanks to Suzanne as well for helping me set this up this morning. Really very helpful. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
So Chuck, I always see you at NAMM. I don't know if you remember me, but whenever I see you at NAMM, I always say that I'm your best customer.
I like best customers. That's a good thing.
And you always say, thank you for your business.
Good.
So as you can tell, I'm from England originally. I moved here 2010, and I really got into gear once I got my career off the ground, maybe around 2014, became a regular customer of yours. And I'm absolutely fascinated by your story. And I've been researching your story for this interview, and it's absolutely amazing. It really is the American dream, and I want to get into that. And I'd like you to tell it if it's okay. So we'll get started right away, and I'll ask you, where are you from originally, and what first got you into music?
Sure. Wow, that goes way back. But I was born in Southern Ohio. My dad was a chemical engineer, and he worked at a Goodyear atomic plant, and he was responsible for the nuclear reaction and how they got rid of the heat. And so I grew up in Southern Ohio till I was about 13. And at age 13, we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that's what's been home for me ever since. And I consider Fort Wayne home. But when I was in fifth grade back then, most of the kids actually learned to play a music instrument. And I wanted to play trombone. And my dad was an accordion player, maybe a frustrated accordion player. And he said, "Oh, you don't want to play a trombone. You want to play a saxophone." He says, and I said, "Why do you want to play saxophone?" I didn't even know what that was. And he said, "Well, they get all the solos." When you're 13 years old and in fifth grade, I don't even know what getting all the solos mean, but I think it was, again, being a frustrated accordion player that he knew I'd be better off playing saxophone. I kind of wish he'd told me to play guitar, but I guess that wasn't in the cards back then.
I like the way he was thinking there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started playing saxophone in band in fifth and sixth grade, and in seventh grade moved to Fort Wayne, and just really took as much music as I could, and I've just been so thankful that it's been a part of my life.
So you moved to Fort Wayne, and that's where Sweetwater is located, obviously. So how was it there? I mean, I imagine now Sweetwater is a big part of the community, right? So how was it before, back in the day?
Well, Fort Wayne originally was a manufacturing town, so we had International Harvester trucks, and today we have General Motors trucks, and very manufacturing, did lots of parts for the various manufacturers, and it wasn't a particularly strong musical town, although there was a little bit. We were on the circuit, especially back in the big band and jazz days. People going to Chicago or Detroit would come through Fort Wayne. And so there's a lot of clubs, or there were a lot of clubs in our community that people talk about, Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman and all these folks that used to play in our community. But it wasn't real strong musically, but we've turned it into kind of a musical mecca, if you will.
Obviously, yeah, completely different now, right? With Sweetwater being there, yeah.
Absolutely.
So you learned to play the saxophone. So out of school, what was your first job in the music industry?
Well, my only job in the music industry has been at Sweetwater.
Oh, really?
I had a few other jobs before I started the company, but I went on the road as a musician after high school. I played all over the country, playing saxophone and keyboards, and I was also a technology guy. So I was the one that ran the sound because the saxophone doesn't play on every note of every song. So I could run the sound from the side of the band. And back in my early days, there weren't many recording studios. The recording studios were in LA or Nashville or New York. And when you're on the road as a musician and you wanted to record either songs or commercials for where you're playing, was quite popular, you did that at the radio stations. And so all the radio stations had 8-track recorders, whether it was an Ampex or a Scully and that sort of thing. And so I'd move to a new town with my band, and we'd go to the local radio station and record a jingle talking about, where we were playing in town that week or for the next couple of weeks. And I was always the guy that got into the recording part and knew how to work the equipment, so on and so forth. And after being on the road for several years, I acquired a little bit of our own recording equipment right when the TX 3340 4-track had come out. And so I would record the band on stage quite often. But after living out of a suitcase for almost 5 years and frankly not making a lot of money, but I did play most of the states in the U.S., I came home and started the recording studio with my VW bus. And my VW bus was handed down to me from my parents in junior high. It was beat up. My mom had wrecked it, ran it into a telephone pole. And so it had a big V in the front that I filled with 2 gallons of Bondo putty, and I put headlights on it from Tractor Supply. Those looked like bug eyes, and I painted it with 99-cent cans of blue spray paint from Kmart. And that's what I drove my junior and senior year of high school, and it's what I drove on the road for about 5 years. And that's all I had, and a little bit of recording equipment when I came home after being on the road. And so I started a business by calling a remote mobile VW recording studio. And I would pull alongside the church or the school or the nightclub. I'd run 100 feet or 200 feet of microphone cables in. I'd mic up the band, the choir, the preacher, whoever's talking or singing or whatever they were doing. And I would sit in the bus with headphones and my 4-track reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I would record those artists.
Wow.
And then I would take those recordings from my VW bus to my very modest 12 by 55 mobile home. And so I lived in a mobile home for a couple of years, and that's where I would edit the recordings, put them in the right order, put compression, reverb, that sort of thing on it. And what really changed my business, I soon moved out of the mobile home into a small house on the west side of Fort Wayne, about 1,000 square feet. And I built a small 2-car garage that really was the home for the recording studio. And now I could have customers come to me instead of me going on location. And what changed my business, in 1983, 1984, I was invited by a friend that owned a music store to go to the NAMM show, the National Association of Music Merchants. And that show was in Chicago. And I saw a prototype of the Kurzweil K250. And that was the first music instrument that played back digital recordings of other instruments. Up until then, we had organs, we had synthesizers, we had electric pianos, but this was the first one that could play back digital recordings of other instruments, and they were stored inside the machine. So you turned it on and they were always there. And I thought, how cool would this be at the end of my recording sessions that I could offer my customers, would you like to hear your music with an upright bass or a string section or a vocal choir? And it was a way for me to add value or to make my sessions sound even better to my customers. And I thought it was an amazing machine, and I sold my grand piano that I had because it had a 9-foot grand piano recorded digitally into it. And the next year when they came out as a real product, I bought one. And I bought a very low serial number, and I got into it real early and quickly reverse engineered how it worked. Being a recording engineer, I recorded a lot of my own sounds. In those days, it had a Macintosh that was hooked up to it, and that's how you would load sounds in and out of it. And in the process of reverse engineering it, I designed some software with a friend of mine and kind of became the expert on the Kurzweil K250. And before long, I was trading sounds with Stevie Wonder and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton and Bob James and all these old artists. And it was kind of a brotherhood. You could call them up and say, wow, you have a K250. I have one too. It was that exclusive. And my business changed from just being a recording studio to frankly helping my friends with their Kurzweils. And my whole goal was just to get more sounds so I'd have more sounds in my studio. What quickly changed, though, is my friends were asking me about upgrades for their Kurzweils or could they buy second Kurzweils. And it's a long, long story, but I became a dealer and started selling Kurzweils and selling them in a time when most people couldn't sell them. Most dealers couldn't sell them because they were very expensive. But I loved the kind of customer that could afford to buy one. Again, those artists that I mentioned. And before long, Kenny Rogers had 14 of these Kurzweils that he was carrying on the road. And
14? Why 14? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, he'd already had probably 4 decades of hits, and his hits ranged from country to rock to pop, all kinds of music. And he would have 6 or 8 of these machines on stage so his players could reproduce all of those orchestra parts and string parts and on and on. He'd have a couple of them in the bus and in the green room and in his lake home. And there was a very famous composer who died a few years ago, Michael Kamen. Michael Kamen had a home in London and Boston, did lots of movie scores. He had 40 of these Kurzweil K250s.
Wow.
We equipped virtually every one of them, and it helped them reproduce the sounds of an orchestra, and that's why musicians really like them. And by 1990, my business had changed from being just a recording studio and helping my few Kurzweil friends to all of a sudden I'm helping their friends. And I remember getting a call very clearly one day. One of those Kurzweil customers called me and said, "Chuck, I'd like to do sheet music on the computer." And I said, "Well, I know how to do that. I'm doing that in my own studio." And by then I was already running a program called Total Music. And Mark the Unicorn had a program called Composer. Long before Professional Composer or before Digital Performer and Performer, they had a program called Professional Composer. So I became a dealer for that software and just helped my friends with their music software. And that was 1990. So you fast forward to today, and 30 years later, and we're sitting on nearly 1 million square feet of building and 1,800 employees and 5 million customers, and could have never dreamed to have a business like we have today.
So
there's a short version. There you go.
No, it's amazing. But it brings up some questions. So you recorded. So how did you learn how to do it? I mean, this is before YouTube. This is before all that stuff. How did you learn how to even do that recording with that with the system?
Sure. Well, again, my dad was an engineer, and one of the things that he bought me at a pawn shop. Boy, I probably was. I was still in Ohio. I remember that. I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and he bought a small reel-to-reel tape recorder. It had 3.5-inch reels on it, actually. And I quickly learned technically how to record at that level. And then we had some tape recorders that did called sound on sound. And so you could record one track and listen to it and play another track on top of it. They weren't separate tracks. They actually just re-recorded on the same track. So you couldn't change the mix or the balance, but, just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And I was always into technology and electronics. So it was pretty straightforward to me. And again, being the guy in the band that was a technical guy, I had to run the sound system, and I built all kinds of equipment because we couldn't afford it. So I built mixing consoles. I even built my own microphones, built speakers and speaker boxes, and it was just a way to get equipment at a relatively good price. And so technology was not afraid for me.
Yeah, well, you're like the original gear fan, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
before YouTube. I remember as a teenager, I had a Tascam, it's like 414, I think. Just 4 tracks. But I remember creating a lot of music on that because that's all I had. That's all I knew I had as well. So
absolutely.
They those times had their benefits as well. You mentioned a few artists that actually, did you know it's Stevie Wonder's birthday today?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So when we're done here, you should call him up and play "Happy Birthday" on the key on the samples.
Yeah. He actually gave me credits on his Characters album, not one of his more popular albums, but I've been a huge Stevie fan long before I got to meet him and go to his studio in LA and that sort of thing. But awesome creative person.
And Kenny Rogers, I'm actually working now remotely. Aside from doing these interviews, I've been working remotely on some songs, and I'm working on a version of The Gambler because I met his family a few months ago at a show, and I want to do a tribute to him. So there's that connection as well. I mean, great artists, right? And I had no idea that someone like Kenny Rogers would use that much technology back in the day. I mean, now we associate big acts, with computers and laptops and iPads, but I had no idea that Kenny Rogers used to. What do you think that was his idea, or was that his kind of band leader's idea? What do you think?
My guess is, knowing most of the guys in his band, up to the last few years, I think it was driven more from the band. He just knew he wanted the songs to sound great. And when I think about Chuck Jacobs or Edgar Struble, guys that were in his band for a long time, they're the technology guys.
So am I right? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Sweetwater, was that the name of the recording studio then when you started?
Okay. So here's the real story that I don't tell a lot of people, but I figure we have time today. Yeah. For the first 2 years of our company, it was called C&B Audio. And for the Chuck part, I guess. And when I lived out in that mobile home, a lot of farms were around me, and those farms had signs at the beginning of their properties, and it might say Rolling Meadow Estates or Steve's Acreage or whatever it needed to say. And as I moved into the city with that first house that I mentioned at about 1,000 square feet, the house was not zoned for commercial business yet. The next property to me that was zoned for business, but my house was not. And so I needed a name and of something that I could put on a sign by the road so my recording studio customers could find me, but also not raise the ire of the local zoning officials. And I had 2 acres of land, a little creek in the backyard, and I just put a bunch of names on a paper. It could have easily been Chuck's Recording Studio or Rolling Meadow Studio. And I had this creek, and I said, water, that's kind of sweet. And next thing you know, it's Sweetwater. And of course, I've heard of Sweetwater, Tennessee, and Sweetwater, Texas, and Sweetwater the band, and Sweetwater bed and breakfast, and on and on and on. But we were fortunate. We registered the Sweetwater.com very, very early in the internet days, back in 1994. And so it's Sweetwater.com ever since.
You know, it's funny because I've been a customer of yours for so long, and I never questioned the name.
Yep.
It's just writing these questions for you. I thought, oh yeah, what does the name mean? Where did it come from? And I started to research it. I couldn't find it, and it's all those years of calling up Sweetwater, I never knew the reason why it was called Sweetwater.
We have not done a good job as a company to explain it in a marketing sort of way. In fact, I've asked every marketing person to ever work for me to come up with a good story. But in the end, it's the truth. I mean, I just pulled it out of the air, put a bunch of names on a piece of paper, and that sounded good to me.
I think there's some great companies that the name doesn't really have anything behind it. You know what I mean? I've heard that before, and sometimes it works. Sometimes it works really well. We've actually got some people in the chat. We've actually got Nick Campling in the chat, and you sell his capos, G7th capos. So hi,
awesome.
Nick. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. I asked him the same question: why are they called G7th capos? So let me skip my next question. Yeah, I also found out from researching for today, you have other businesses as well as Sweetwater. So can you tell us about those, please?
Sure. It sounds a little bit arrogant, and I don't mean it that way, but there's 14, 15, 16, I'm not even sure how many. Each one of them has a story. One of them is called Sweet Cars. We sell slightly used 1, 2, 3-year-old cars that are kind of nicer brands, nicer models that aren't normally sold in Fort Wayne. Range Rovers and Bentleys, and of course Mercedes and Porsches too, but tend to be 1, 2, 3-year-old cars where the depreciation is already out of them. It allows someone to buy a nice car and a few less dollars. That was started strictly because back in the 2008-9 recession, I wanted to help create more jobs in our community. And there was a piece of property that I thought was on a perfect thoroughfare that I could open up a used car business, if you will. And it's done really, really well, and just thankful to have it. And today we probably have 15 employees working there or so. Another company called Sweet Aviation, and we teach people how to fly airplanes and helicopters, and we rent airplanes and helicopters. Very, very interesting background on that story. It's a little bit younger, maybe 8 years old or so. It was a business that was started by a doctor, and sadly, this is a horrific story, but the doctor had an airplane accident and killed his wife and 2 of his children, but he lived through the airplane accident, and one of his sons lived through the airplane accident. You fast forward 10 years later, and he's remarried to a new wife. And his son is a sophomore in high school and a basketball phenom, just an amazing basketball star in our community. And he'd just gotten a full ride scholarship to a Michigan school, and they were going to Northern Michigan to celebrate his getting this full 4-year ride. And the dad flying the airplane had another accident, and this time he killed himself, killed his second wife, and the son, Austin, lived and hurt pretty bad, but just horrific story that poor Austin's lived through 2 airplane crashes. Most people don't live through 1. He's lived through 2. He's lost his mother and, frankly, his second mother and his father and brother and sister. And so the estate came to me and said, would you be interested in buying, Dr. Hatch's flight school? And I said, I'm really not interested. There's no money in aviation. And they said, would you come talk to us and look at it? And I went and looked at it. And what really impressed me was the people that were running it for Dr. Hatch were great people. And through the recession, they had never lost money, hadn't made much money, but hadn't lost money. And I thought we could apply the same customer service skills, same marketing that we do at Sweetwater. And they didn't want that much for the business. And I felt we could get involved and help turn it around and save all those jobs. And fast forward, 7, 8 years later now, and we're doing 3 times the business they did when I bought it. There's probably 20 employees out there, and it's a very, very successful business in our community. And just was a horrific way to get into it. You can research the story. It's been covered by lots and lots of magazines and newspapers around the country. To live through 2 airplane crashes is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Today, Austin, the young man that was involved in, he's in his early 20s and doing really well. He got married and quite successful. But he's got a story and a half to tell. In fact, he's a motivational speaker, as you can imagine, and we'll be telling his story probably for the rest of his life. And it's one that I just can't even fathom living through. And then we have several other businesses. We have a big theater, a movie theater that was started in 1950 that was designed to be the big, glamorous 2,400 seat theater. Did well for a long time. And in the 70s, the multiplex theater started coming along and it couldn't be competitive anymore. So they put a wall down the middle. So now they had 2 1,200 seat theaters. And that worked for a couple more years. It still couldn't be competitive. It went dark. And for a long time, it sat empty. It filled with pigeons and rats, and you can imagine everything else. And a young fellow bought it at a tax sale for $500.
Wow.
And he came to me a couple years ago and said, I'm interested in starting a nightclub or a music club. Would you be interested? And I said no for quite a while. And eventually my wife met him and she said, I really like what he's doing. I think we should get involved. And what I initially thought was going to be just a small club turned into a beautiful, beautiful performance space. We put almost $12 million in it. It has amazing acoustics, the best sound system you can get. And until the pandemic, we were having 2, 3, 4 concerts a week through the building, and we've done several hundred now in the year and a half that we've been open. And it's just a really, really high quality place, and we do every genre of music that you can imagine, because you can't just do one genre and expect people to come out multiple times a week. And so by mixing it up, and we now are in this touring group that goes from Detroit to Indianapolis to Chicago, and we get some really, really good names of people coming up or coming down and that sort of thing. It's great business. And there's a whole bunch of others. But every one of the businesses, every one of them, have been designed to just do the right thing for the customer, treat people well. And that's really what Sweetwater is all about. We sell music equipment, but what we really sell are dreams and helping people fulfill their aspirations and doing it in a strong, ethical way. And that's what I just absolutely make sure all the other businesses do.
Let's focus on that in a bit more detail, because that's really what I wanted to find out from you today. How did you go from the recording to what you have now? I mean, what you have now is huge. So I want to kind of try and focus in. What do you think? Well, my first question is, where did you learn these principles and ideas that you now apply with customer service and these kind of ideas? And what do you think really caused the growth? And how was the growth? Has it been a steady growth? Was there something? I assume the internet was huge for you, right? You've obviously adopted these modern things like the internet.
Sure.
Can we just talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, and it goes back to the early days for me. I grew up as a Boy Scout, and that's not a real popular thing necessarily today. When I was little, a lot of young boys went through that. But a Boy Scout learns to treat people well, learns to respect the environment, learns to treat people the way you would want to be treated. And the Boy Scout law says that a Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, brave, and reverent. Amazing principles to live by personally, but I think even more amazing principles to live by professionally. And I recite those to all of my new employees. I don't make them learn them or memorize them like I have, but they can always Google them. But you just think about it. I won't repeat the whole list, but trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly. Those are great principles. And that's what we do every day at Sweetwater. And so I don't have to think about what I should do for customers. I just know instinctively you just do the right thing. And every one of my employees is empowered to do whatever the right thing is for the customer. They will never get in trouble for doing too much for the customer. They'll get in trouble for not doing enough. And what I don't want to ever hear is, oh, I need to talk to my manager, or I need to see about approval. That from a receptionist to the warehouse person and everywhere in between, we've screened really hard to get the very best employees we can get. We train them really well, and then I trust them. I want them to run the business as if it were their business. And so a sales engineer, as an example, should never, ever, ever have to get manager approval on anything. They're running their own business. Do what they need to do the right thing for the customer. If that's replace the keyboard or replace the guitar or pay for an Uber ride or buy a lunch, whatever they need to do, just do the right thing for the customer. And that's how we operate today. And it's pretty simple. And the rules are much simple like that.
It is actually when you say it like that, it's very obvious. Just give a great, professional, friendly, reliable, trustworthy service. It makes a lot of sense. So you didn't go to like workshops and study, how to grow a business. No, you just said, let's start a business, let's treat our customers well, and then they'll come to us because we have that relationship. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Wow.
There might have been workshops and classes when I started, but I don't remember them. I don't remember having the opportunity. I see them all the time today, and I go, wow, that would have been helpful in my early days.
Yeah.
But again, I just operated with the mindset of why would you not treat people the way you should treat people?
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
Back to your other question. Yeah, we're very fortunate. We have 41 years now, 41 years of every year, our top line and our bottom line are better than the year before. We've continued to grow, and I'm very, very thankful. And it's because of customers like you, but it's also because of the employees. We have such great people, and we train them hard, and we just release them, let them go.
Yeah.
And I always also try and treat my employees well. If I don't treat my employees well, how in the world do I think they're going to treat our customers? And so that's really, really important to me. But I'm just thankful that we've had great years of success. And again, not just even financially, I'm not really driven by that. My success that I enjoy more is watching people make music and enjoying themselves and making a difference in the world. And that's what I really like.
It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of these interviews at this time, and I've been so fortunate to have people like Chris Martin and Lloyd Baggs and people like that. So inspiring, and it's that angle that I love. The fact that you were a musician, you understand creating music. You didn't just see a business opportunity. I didn't know this about you. To be honest, as a customer a few years ago, I just saw Sweetwater as a place you go, you log in, you buy something, and they had a good return policy. That was it. But now I get to know you. It came from such a great place where you understand the customer, you understand the art and joy of making music, and that's obviously been a great thing for you because that's translated into the business, and I think that's really important. I think that's great. That's very inspiring.
Until the pandemic, I was playing out multiple times a month. I still play saxophone and keyboards and play in 2 different bands. Now it's slowed down for the last 8 years, and I hope it comes back.
I'm sorry. How do you have time to do all these things?
Oh man, I love playing, and I tell my wife if I ever have to quit playing, just put me in the ground because it's a great release from my day job, and it's why I got into it, and I just love doing it. There's nothing like standing on a stage and playing an instrument, and not only do you know the people in the audience are usually liking it, but it just feels good. And if you go on stage and you're a little under the weather or thinking about, you can let all that stuff go and just play music. And I just love doing that. And I started to say that I'm a gear junkie. So, I'm fortunate that I get to see a lot of the stuff before it ever comes out. But I'm just as excited as most of our customers are about new gear and new things. And I'm constantly using this stuff out on location or on stage. And so I'm a little bit different than a lot of the big company owners in that I'm out there using the latest pedal or the reverb unit or wireless microphone or whatever it can be.
It's really great. I didn't know this about you. I absolutely love this. I'm absolutely blowing my mind. I see you at NAMM, but I always assume, everyone's at NAMM to network and do their business thing. I never thought you might be walking around actually as excited about the gear as I am, which is it's a great thing. It's good to know.
I have a whole digital performer setup that I use out live in I play in a little trio, and it's got a very, very large file, and we call up over 650 songs, load them all into RAM at the beginning of the night, and I drive it all from a Kurzweil keyboard. I never touch the computer again, but it does a lot of the drums and the bass and automated lights and the effects change and all that. So I'm way, way deep into digital performer. But home, I have a whole Pro Tools system, and so I've recorded several albums at home, as well as once in a while I get access in our studio. So I'm using the gear all the time.
Obviously you you must have an amazing team there as well that take care of things for you now. But even with that, I'm just very impressed that you have multiple businesses, Sweetwater, you're still playing out, you have a family. So I want to ask you, what does a typical day look like for you then?
Now, I wouldn't say there is a typical day, but what I would say is you hit it right on the head. I have great people all around me, great leaders, folks have been with me a long, long time. But even the whole company, and that's what inspires me every day. I come in every morning early because I know the level of expertise in our building, and just have great people that we've interviewed well, we've checked references, we've trained them well, and they're good friends. And I can say that at every level. I was in our warehouse this morning. I have a meeting later today with executives, and regardless of where I am in the company, I'm just personally excited and enthused about the quality of people. I get literally hundreds and hundreds of emails every day from customers raving about their experience. I'm not saying we're perfect. We make mistakes once in a while, but what we do is make sure we handle that mistake well. But generally, 99.x% of the time, it's a customer raving about their experience with their sales engineer or someone in tech support, and that, to me, that's just inspirational, which inspires me to be here every day. And we've got folks with Dove Awards and Grammy Awards and their doctorates, and they've run their own manufacturing companies. They've been manufacturers reps. They've worked at factories, and it's just a high level of integrity and a high level of employee that's here. And as we've gotten more and more successful, it becomes easier and easier to get that level of person here. But my day is a balance, and I've got good people around me. I tell folks all the time that whatever I'm doing, I'm all in. And so I work really hard when I work hard. I work really or I play really hard when I'm at home, and I try and stay focused. When I'm talking to my 13-year-old daughter, I'm not answering my phone. I'm not doing emails. I'm with my 13-year-old daughter. And when I'm with you today, my phone's not ringing off the hook. I just have great folks around me, and I try and stay, if I'm doing something, if it's worth doing, I'm all in. I'm 110% all in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great. We were really hoping to come to GearFest this year. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but I know you're doing it online, so I'll be following along with that, and everyone in the chat should as well. But obviously, we were hoping to come because we've heard such great things about the facility, and I want to share that with the viewers that aren't aware. You have gyms and salons and it's like an all-in-one place, right? So again, was this your idea to create that kind of environment?
It was. We moved into this location back in 2006. We were at a previous location for about 17 years. And when we moved in 2006, the company was really starting to take off. And I knew it was important to have a great place for not only our customers, but also for our employees, and particularly if I wanted to recruit folks from around the country. And so you're right, it's a campus. It started out as a simple 40,000 square foot building that we remodeled. It was already here. We added a 35,000 square foot warehouse, and that was 2006. And so from then till today, we've expanded and added on, and we just 8 weeks ago opened a brand new distribution center. And all in, we're approaching nearly 1 million square feet of real estate, which just blows me away on 163 acres. And I pinch myself every day, but you're right. There's a restaurant, there's a gym. We have a full-time doctor and nurse that are completely free to our employees. You can get your hair done, you can get massages, you can have your dry cleaning dropped off. My employees work really hard, and they're here a lot of hours of the day. Even at 40 hours a week, that's a good part of your time. And I want to make sure they're as productive and as effective when they're here. And I want to value them. I want them to know that I value them. And I also want when they go home, they can go home. And so we do things at work to make it easy for them. And we have a full-time concierge that can get your car, cleaned or oil changed or some repairs to it. Can find a dog sitter or a babysitter for you. And those are all things that we can do to just help our employees, but also to help our customers. And so that concierge, they're full time. If somebody comes in and their luggage is lost at an airline or that sort of thing, they can continue to do their meeting with us. And the concierge folks will figure out where your luggage is or make reservations for a concert or a sporting event, so on and so forth. And it's a way for us to give back to our employees. But then we also normally, again, until this pandemic, we make the whole mall area open to our community. And so we have a lot of conference rooms, and we've got our big 250-seat theater. And if we're not using that space, we tell the community, especially the nonprofit organizations, they're welcome to use the space at no charge.
Wow.
And so we have the Boy Scouts in here and the Girl Scouts and Boys and Girls Club and various churches and nonprofit organizations using it to have board meetings, to have fundraisers, to have whatever kind of meetings they want to have. And it's another way for us to give back to the community. It doesn't really cost us much, but it also brings all those people into our building, and they have to come past our store. And you'd be surprised the number of folks that come in and either buying instruments for themselves or for their grandchildren and that sort of thing. But our building really is just a testimony of how well we're doing, and it's a testimony back to our employees and our customers and to the community.
So if a customer, I'm in New York City, but say I was driving to Chicago and I stopped off on the way, are people like me allowed to come in and use facilities and even buy a guitar while we're there? Can we do that?
Absolutely. Oh. We have a really, really nice music store today. A secret I'll let you in on. I haven't told many people yet, but we're building an even bigger, nicer store that'll be done right at the end of the year or maybe in January of next year. But even today, we have hundreds and hundreds of guitars on display and all the technology and drum set. It's a big music store. And we're just taking it up yet another notch. But yeah, you'd be welcome. You could come in and hang out at the store. We've got another store in here that's just used gear. So you could look at used gear if that was important to you. You could have lunch in our restaurant or go to our coffee bar. And if you don't like coffee, we even have ice cream and milkshakes and all kinds of other stuff at the coffee bar. And we've got a whole gaming area. So you could play pinball, ping pong, pool table. There's a high definition golf simulator, lots of video games, and all that's completely free.
Wow.
There's a couple things that we keep just for our employees or invited guests, as we call it. We have a racquetball court in our building, and we have a video library, and that's more for the employees, or friends of the employees. So sometimes an employee might invite an outside guest in to play racquetball and that sort of thing.
Absolutely incredible. I fear if I came there, I would never leave.
I like that. That's why we built the place. We're always looking for great people.
Someone called it. It's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. I was reading online.
Yeah.
It really is. Absolutely amazing. Wow. Now, I want to keep everything positive, but I do want to ask you as a businessman, the current situation, you've had year-on-year growth every year, which is amazing. Do you see this current situation? I mean, first of all, how are you handling it? And do you see it as having a negative impact on your business?
Well, let me start with, I know how bad this pandemic has been. I've shut down all of my businesses except for Sweetwater. And the store even had to shut down, but we were able to keep our warehouse open. I know how so many people are hurting. We don't even know where the bottom is yet. And the businesses and individuals that are hurting, I totally agree for them. And I know it's difficult. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, but in the state of Indiana, our governor said it was okay for distribution centers or warehouses to stay open. And so through this whole pandemic, we've been able to be open. And we've been shipping a lot of stuff. In fact, again, embarrassing and to say, and I don't want to discount the people that are suffering, but we've been shipping like Black Friday, Cyber Monday amounts of sales for the last 6 weeks. We are going crazy, shipping as much as we can for several reasons. People are stuck at home, and so what are they doing? They're going online ordering. They're being encouraged by their governors to order online. And then for quite a while, our competitors, Guitar Center and Sam Ash, they had to shut down in their states. And even Amazon, who's a big competitor, they were only shipping essential stuff. And so if you tried to order any music gear from Amazon, they were quoting 4 to 6 weeks. We were open through that whole period. We brought in some temporary help to help us. My wife, myself, my 13-year-old daughter were all in packing stations, packing boxes.
Really?
I packed a lot of boxes. Oh, wow. Yeah. I was there the day before yesterday. We're still thousands of orders behind. Now, we're trying to get them out every day, but we're just really, really busy. And quite often, I was actually signing the orders myself and saying, yes, this is really Chuck who packed your order. And that was kind of fun. So we're doing well, and we just opened our store back up this week. The governor allowed us to do that, and hopefully we're through the worst of it. We don't know. There's some talk that it may rebound back, but we are moving forward, and I'm just very thankful and blessed that through this period we're doing okay. But my heart really feels for everybody else that's suffering, and again, we don't know where it's going to end. And I think about all the service jobs and the retail jobs, and not only do they personally suffer, but those are the customers of Sweetwater and the car dealerships and the restaurants, and where does it end? And I don't know. I mean, it's the most amazing thing we've ever seen in our lives, and of course, never expected to see anything like this.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, we're in New York, and I'm a full-time performer, so I've been ordering less, obviously, because I'm not working right now, and also I feel like my first thought was, do people want to hear about gear right now with what's going on? But I'm hearing from my friends that are retailers that they are selling a lot of stuff. Again, a lot of people now are learning the guitar. The only good thing I've got from this so far really is the time, and like time to do things like this and to work on my music. So that is a positive, and I can see why people are embracing that and still ordering gear. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that for you, things are still going well. But of course, yeah, you're right. It's a terrible thing, and I guess people just coping with in whichever way that they can, right?
Right. It's been interesting working at the packing tables. I can absolutely see what people are thinking across the country. I can see the culture, and one order will be a podcasting set.
Yes.
With, you just tell, they're going to start a podcast or they want to broadcast their music live. The next thing is a full set of drum heads and 6 pair of drumsticks and a beater for their bass drum. Oh, wow, he's refurbishing his drum set because he or she has a little bit of time. Or the next order is guitar polish and new strings and some new pickups. And it's just absolutely amazing to see what people are doing in their homes during this period. And then, of course, the whole thing, as you mentioned, for live musicians, we don't know when they're coming back. I've heard everything from in a couple months to it might be next year, might even be 2022. And the other thing is, we don't know what the new world is going to be. So even if the musicians come back, I mentioned I have a 2,000 person theater. If I have to do social distancing and keep everybody 6 foot apart,
yeah.
I think I hold about 300 people. Well, at 300 people, I can't afford to bring the level of acts into our facility that we've had. But I also think there'll be some good things, some positive things. And if you look now on Facebook Live and YouTube, and I think all the musicians that are now putting their music out that way and getting closer to their customers or their listeners, their fans, I think it's a cool thing. And I hope that part continues.
Yeah.
I saw a thing 2 weeks ago on a Thursday night, the Berkeley School of Music, the bass teacher there started a thing where he had bass teachers, bass profs from colleges all over the country on a Zoom conference. And so there were about 20 different bass teachers from schools all over the country, competitive schools to Berkeley, actually. But it took that competitiveness down. And those 20 or so teachers from some of the best schools and universities around the country for nearly 3 hours spoke. And there were 1,000 of us. I'm not even a bass player, but I was still just fascinated to hear, out of the mouths of these very, very famous bass musicians and bass teachers. They did a 3-hour conference, if you will, and that would have not happened had we not had this pandemic. I think there's going to be some really positive things once we figure out what the new world is.
There are positive things. I was a YouTuber. I've been doing the YouTube thing for 2 years, but I hadn't done a live stream before this. I wasn't playing my music. I was doing a lot of gear reviews. Now I stream my concert once a week. I do these interviews. I still do the gear reviews. And you're right. It's just the focus has shifted and also been accelerated. Like now, you can't buy a webcam right now. You can't buy certain things. They've all sold out because the online world has just accelerated. And that's why I'm also impressed that you got your business online in 95, because I remember getting the internet in a small town in England around 95. No one had it back then. So for you to start that, obviously as a gear guy, you saw the internet and you thought, right, let's get on that. And what a great decision that was, right?
You're absolutely right about webcams and audio interfaces. We are selling those, or we used to sell dozens or 100 a day. We're selling thousands a day from every one of the brands. It's amazing to me the people are buying audio interfaces right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're doing this. Like, I have a mixer and an audio interface and the cam, DSLR and all these things, lights. I presume you're not selling many PA systems and things like that, right?
Not as many PA systems because I don't know when you'd use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So, I've got the vision of you now packing the boxes. I love that too, that you're still so involved. It's awesome. Really awesome.
Oh, man, the first couple of days I did it, my back hurt, my fingers were all cut up. But I will tell you, it gave me an amazing respect for the people that are packing those boxes every day.
Yeah.
Amazing respect for what they do.
Yeah, I think it's important that you still do those jobs and understand how those people are operating, what they're doing. So, and when you're packing, I've got to ask you about the sweets. I presume you started giving sweets because of Sweetwater, right? Is that kind of obvious?
It's a sweet way of saying thank you. The world has gotten so fast and less customer service oriented. We've done that for a long time, nearly 40 years now. And it's just a sweet way of saying thank you. Yeah. And 99% of the customers love it. Every once in a while I get some hate mail from somebody that says, why are you putting that awful candy in? Don't you know it's bad for you? And then we mark their record to never send them candy again.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, most people appreciate it, and whether they eat it themselves or give it to their children or their grandchildren. And I can tell you story after story of really fun things or great things that have happened because of that candy, and it's just our little way of saying thanks.
So, how much candy do you go through a year?
I'll start with the big number. It's $500,000 a year of candy.
No,
$500,000.
No way.
And if we weren't giving the candy away, I could give all that money to nonprofit organizations, I suppose, or something. But we sell a lot of candy. We've got 8 people full time making candy, round the clock, 24 hours a day making candy. We buy it in bulk and they bag it up and put it in these little bags. It's crazy numbers. Wow. Most bags, and it varies a little bit, but they get somewhere between 4 to 7 pieces of candy, and we're shipping right now 15,000 orders a day or so. And so you can kind of do the math. We do a lot of candy.
Wow. All right, awesome. This has been absolutely amazing chat. I'm absolutely loving it. I want to come to our friends in the chat because we now have about 25 people watching. I want to I'll make sure I get their questions as well.
Sure.
I love that you have. There's a lot of people here from Europe. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you, did you ever think about expand? And some people in the chat are saying the same thing. Did you ever think about expanding globally?
Yeah, it's a great question. We talk about it here all the time. But what I will tell you is right now there is so much business in the U.S. That we feel that's out there, and we want to stay focused on that. It becomes a whole nother challenge. We'd have to open a call center in Europe or across the pond somewhere. And right now the business is in the U.S. And frankly, there's some great people in Europe. I'm friends with Hans Thoman of Thoman Music, and I wouldn't want to walk on his water any more than I want him to come over to the United States.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, Thoman are like the European Sweetwater, aren't they? The huge company. So yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, me comes to me.
I'm sorry, I'll add one more point to this. And our model is all about having a one-on-one relationship with our end user. And when you start talking about another country, you have language differences, you have time zone differences. And so we would have to set call centers up in those markets to have local people. And it's hard enough to do it in one location. Right now, I can't imagine opening in other locations. And we just want to do what we do really, really well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because once you go global, it's a whole new thing, right? It's yeah. Don says, has the Sweetwater Brewery in Atlanta ever been confused with Sweetwater music?
I'm sure it does. And I get people somewhat regularly sending me bottles of Sweetwater water and all kinds of other Sweetwater paraphernalia from around the country. But we're in different categories, different classes. Sometimes I get accused of owning the various Sweetwater brands around the country, which I don't. All of our Sweetwater is here in Fort Wayne.
John Kelly was on yesterday. He works with Ortega Guitars. I don't think you stock them, but he says good morning. How you doing?
Good morning.
And Nick Campling's been here. Nick's great. Nick's been on the show as well. So thanks, Nick. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yeah, lots of people saying they wish you shipped to Europe. Any plans? We just addressed that one. The face I always associate with Sweetwater is Mitch Gallagher. Can you tell us how he got involved?
Yeah, Mitch came to me when he was a young man. I hired him as a sales engineer, probably early 90s would be my guess. Worked with us for many years. He kind of helped start our video marketing part of the company. And then he left for a while and became the editor for Keyboard Magazine and a couple other magazines. And as the magazine started to struggle a little bit, and we'd always stayed in touch, and got Mitch to come back, and he is definitely the face of Sweetwater, maybe more so than even I am. Incredible man. I'm very thankful to have him here. He's knowledgeable on so many items, so many things, and just a darn likable guy. Just love him to death. And Mitch is great.
He is great. He talks really well. He's incredibly knowledgeable, great musician. Did you ever think, though, back in the day, about doing the YouTube thing yourself?
No. I'm not You're lucky to have me on the camera today. I'm much more comfortable behind the scenes. I'm more comfortable playing music on stage where I get lost into my instrument, but I don't normally like doing videos, so I don't do a lot of these, and Mitch is way better at it than I would ever be. That's the one thing I've done at this company. I've surrounded myself with people that do all the jobs better than me.
Right.
I will tell you, in the early days, I did some video stuff. I did some demo tapes on how to play the Kurzweil K250 and the K1000 and all those, but I quickly got outside of my level of expertise, and it became better to have other experts do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The thing to take away from today, or one of the things to take away from today, is you need a strong team. It's like a band, isn't it? When you have a band,
absolutely,
you're as strong as the weakest link, they always say. Brad Miller says he saw you on the Worship Magazine live stream. Were you involved with the Lincoln Brewster Strat?
I personally was not involved. I know our company was involved. We've done a lot of projects like that, but I personally was not involved.
And Michael says, I order a lot of stuff from Sweetwater. Now I want to order a Lefty Squire Jazzmaster just because I have so much more respect for Chuck because of this interview. Well, there you go.
I like that. Michael, thank you very much, and thank you for help with the interview today. That's great.
We got you a sale today as well.
I like it. I'll start doing more of these then.
Yeah, no,
invite me back on.
Oh, anytime. I mean, I love these interviews because they allow us to get to know the people in this quite informative environment, right? I'm in my studio, you're in your office, and we're just chatting, and it's really nice to get to know. Like you said, the company is about the people, And I love getting to know the people and most importantly, hearing their stories.
Sure.
Because everyone who's like, again, Chris Martin, Nick from G7th, they have so many, and yourself, you have so many stories, and they're always good and they're always inspiring. I just love hearing them. I really do.
I've been very thankful for the success that we've had and that I've had personally. But the one thing that is disappointing sometimes is people don't get to know me, and they think I'm this rich guy that's out of touch. And I'll go into restaurants or grocery stores, even in our community or anywhere across the country, actually, because my face has been in a lot of our Pro Gear directories and all that. I'll have people behind me that whisper or point, and they'll be telling their spouse or whoever they're with, "That's Chuck Surack." And I don't want to make them feel bad, but I want to turn around and say, "Hey, I'm a normal guy. I'm like everyone else." And in fact, I talk all the time around our company that literally no one is any more important than anyone else. We all have the same dreams, the same fears, the same aspirations, and I should be willing to get my hands just as dirty in the warehouse as anybody else would. And I wouldn't ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do. And I just wish people would understand, I got the same dreams and fears and aspirations and emotions, and sometimes it's lonely at the top because people are afraid to talk to me. They think somehow I'm untouchable or untalkable. And, I publish my email address. I publish my phone number. I'm totally accessible. I return every call. I return every email because I think we all deserve that. And whether you're a customer or someone trying to sell me, a cemetery plot or windows, try me. You'll get a return phone call or an email from me. I just think we all deserve respect.
Yes, that really impressed me when I reached out to you for this interview and you got back to me straight away. And it's just, it's great. And again, but that makes sense now why your business is so successful. Because you have a great attitude. And I think everyone needs to remember that whatever they do in life. It's a great lesson, it really is. Thank you for that lesson. Nick Campling says, do you get involved in worship bands? A bit of saxophone is really special in a worship band.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm real involved in my church. And for the first several years, I played a lot. And I will tell you, over the last couple of years, I've been really busy and traveling quite a bit. And the idea of making a Thursday rehearsal and then, of course, all the Sunday services has been a little difficult. So I just do specials once in a while, but not as often as I would like. The other bands that I play in, we never rehearse, so that makes it a lot easier. I can play a Friday or Saturday night and don't have to worry about rehearsing. But with the worship group and the church I'm involved with, they do a Thursday night every week rehearsal, and it's just hard to make it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I had a question. So I invent a new piece of gear, and I want Sweetwater to stock it. What's the process for that?
Yeah, it's some manufacturers think it's a little bit intimidating, but what they really need to do is just start talking to our merchandising folks. And whether it's our director of merchandising, Phil Rich, or one of the various people that report to him, you just got to explain to us what it is. And, one of the challenges is a lot of companies will start a product and they can't build enough of them. We have so many customers today. We can't afford to take it on, put it on our website, do all the stuff that we do, train our sales engineers on it if they can't produce enough of them. So they have to be able to produce enough that we can satisfy the need for our customers.
I've seen that. So a company will come to Sweetwater, actually give a demo to the sales engineers, so they can show them and ask questions and really learn about that piece of gear. So with the sales engineers, then do they each have their own specific skill set? Like was I assigned to a guitar player because I buy guitar equipment, or does everyone know about everything?
Well, everyone knows about guitars except Chuck. Chuck's the only guy that can't. I can play about 3 chords. It's probably enough to, I guess, do most rock and roll songs. But everyone is trained really, really well. They all come to us almost all of them come with a 4-year technology degree or some serious background. And then we put them through 13 weeks of what we call Sweetwater University. And it's almost like getting your doctorate, but it's 8 hours a day, 80 different teachers, and teach 300 different classes. And I won't go into all the detail, but about a third of it is learning to work our systems. We have a very, very detailed customer relationship management software where we keep track of, what equipment you may have, maybe spouse's name, dog's name, children's name, what your dreams and aspirations are. Another third is we teach about how to develop relationships, because that's another unique thing that we do at Sweetwater. The sales engineer always talks to the same customer, or the other way around. The customer always talks to the same sales engineer, unless the sales engineer is on vacation or something like that. But the relationship stays one-on-one, and that's different than all of our competitors where you get the next telemarketing clerk. And we think that's really important. By talking to the same sales engineer, you don't have to start all over, and you can. The sales engineer understands what you're trying to accomplish and what you're wanting to do. And when a new piece of gear comes in that seems to make sense for you, he or she can reach out and say, hey, I got this new thing that might work great in your setup. And then the third part is we teach them about products and technology. Now they come with a lot of background already, but stuff's changing all the time. But they spend about a third of that time just learning all the greatest, latest stuff. Once they do that, plus they have 2 meetings every week, Tuesday morning and a Thursday morning sales meeting for the rest of their career here. So they're always staying on top of gear. And I would tell you that all of our sales engineers can sell anything really well. And I would put them up against some of the very best sales engineers or salespeople across the country. My worst guy on drums or my worst guy on guitar can sell drums or guitar better than most, and I don't mean that arrogantly, but they know enough about the products and have been trained enough. They can probably sell better than 95% of the people selling drums or guitars across the country. That being said, most of my sales engineers do have an instrument or a preference that they play. They might be a guitar player, they might be a drummer, or maybe there's a saxophone player or two here, and they'll have some extra expertise there. But I will also tell you we work as a team. So if one of my guys happens to be a drummer, he's still really good at selling guitars, but he gets some really, really tweaky guitar question that he doesn't know, he's got team members that he can go to and say, I have this customer and wants to know, where did this finish really come from, or what's the background on this? There's expertise all around our company that you can get information like that from. But no matter who the sales engineer, I'm very confident that they'll do a really, really good job of selling you virtually anything you need here.
I also heard you have specialists there. So if I'm interested in a Line 6 piece of gear, you have someone that specializes in Line 6 gear. Is that right?
Well, we have, because we're so big, we have a whole bunch of manufacturers reps in our building. And so we have folks from Harman and JBL and just all, I can go down the whole list, but we've probably got 25 or 30 manufacturers, people that are in our building all day long. They'll talk to customers occasionally, or our sales engineer can go to that factory rep and say, when's this thing going to become available, or what's the wattage, or what's the, and a lot of that's in our systems already. But if there's some really out there detail, we've got good connections to get that. And the one thing I would add, I probably overstepped a little bit. Although all of our sales engineers can sell everything, we do have a couple teams. Actually, they're all split into teams, but we've got a team of folks that specialize in selling specifically to schools. They just have special needs, the kind of equipment they buy and that sort of thing. And then we have another set that specializes in selling to churches and worship leaders. And that's just a huge, huge thing. And they have, again, some slightly different needs maybe than somebody recording at home and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because I play guitar. My channel is focused around guitar, singing, recording, and acoustic guitar pickups, which is quite a lot of stuff already. But I was wondering, like, if someone comes to order a drum set, do they get assigned to an engineer that specializes in drums, or is it just random how they get assigned to a sales engineer?
It is random.
Okay.
But again, I will say the guy that knows all those things you said about guitar, he or she knows them about drums also.
Wow.
I will also say over time, and there's no magic formula for this, it's not anything we do on purpose, but over time, my guys and gals that are really good on drums tend to have more drum customers. And I think that's just the customer, feels comfortable, keeps buying from them. And maybe the guitar player that's not quite as good on drums, maybe he loses that drum customer a little bit. But really, everybody sells everything, and they do a really good job at it.
And how many employees do you have now?
Well, we have 1,800 employees at Sweetwater, and we have just under 500 that are sales engineers talking to customers every day.
That's really, very, very impressive. So I'm going to start to wrap up now. So my final question for you was, before I say goodbye to everyone in the chat, what do you see for the future of the company then?
Right. So been doing it for over 41 years now, and the products have come and gone and changed. But what's still the same is I have customers that have been with me for 39 and 40 and 41 years. And I'd like to think going forward, we'll still have customers going forward with this. I don't know what we'll be recording on. Probably in the next couple of years, we'll be recording on the end of our ballpoint pen. But I remember when it was reel-to-reel analog, and then it was digital in a box, and then it was, hard disk recording with computers and all that. And again, I don't know where the technology is going to go. But I do know we're going to stay focused on the music and the live and recording arts part of the business. And we're going to be selling with the same integrity and the same quality to our customers like we always have. But I can't tell you what the products are going to be in 5 or 10 years. But I do know there'll be music, and I do know there'll be music equipment sold, and we're going to be right in the heart of it all.
Of course, it'll be very interesting to see where it all goes. Also, I'm a gear fan as well. I'm always looking to see what comes next. And I really do hope that we get to a place soon where I can visit Sweetwater in person, I really hope that next year I'll see you again at NAM, and I can tell you again that I'm your greatest customer.
I would love if you come out to Indiana. I'd love to show you around, whether we have Beer Fest or any other time you can get out here.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to seeing you at NAM. Even NAM, I don't know what NAM's going to look like this next January.
I know.
I've had some discussions with the leadership at NAM, and the first thing you do at a NAM show is you shake hands with everybody.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to do that, or are we going to bow like the Japanese people do? It's going to be an interesting NAM show, even in January.
It feels like yesterday we were just there, and I was picking up guitars and shaking hands, and even though we're careful at NAM, that was happening right then. And yeah, it really is crazy. But like I said, there's some positive things that have come from this, and there's some awful things. And I just want to say thank you for your time. Your story has been so inspiring. It's been great to get to know you as a person in this time. And definitely, I have family in Chicago, so next time if we take a road trip, I'm definitely going to stop by and take you up on your offer. Absolutely,
I'd love to have you here.
No, thank you so much.
Great spending time with you today, and thank you to everybody that's typing in and listening, and thanks to all of our customers too. So have a great day.
Yep, everyone in the chat, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your questions. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I've got Larry Fishman on tomorrow from Fishman Electronics. Yeah, great guy. Chuck, thank you so much. You've been absolutely wonderful. I'm very happy, and please keep in touch, and I'll see you again. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, my friend. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Very inspiring story. I enjoyed that even more than I thought I would. So if you enjoyed that story as well, please do share it with your friends. I would really appreciate it. And please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. I'll see you next time for more interviews. I've got some performances coming up, more gear reviews, everything music, everything guitar and singing. So thanks everyone for joining me. You really made it awesome. Oh, hi, Alec. How you doing, my friend? Awesome. Yeah, please watch the replay. That was a fun and inspiring chat. I really loved that. I'm so grateful to Chuck for doing that. It's absolutely awesome. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow is Larry Fishman. Please join me for that. Back to the time of 4 p.m. EST. Talking everything acoustic guitar pickups and also electric pickups as well. I'll see you then. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.